Mr. Christian Malanga Masumari, commonly known as Christian Malanga, was born in Kinshasa, DRC, former Zaire, on January 2, 1983. Son of Joseph Malanga and Chantal Kibonge, both from Kinshasa. With a family of 6, Malanga grew up in Ngaba, one of the poorest neighborhoods in Kinshasa. The ethnic political massacre, which took place in 1993 in Lubumbashi, led Malanga to leave the country to take refuge in Eswatini, former Swaziland. Malanga went to St. Paul Methodist Primary School in Eswatini. In 1998, they were fortunate to be sponsored to settle in Salt Lake City, Utah, United States. Taking advantage of his presence in the United States, Mr. Malanga excelled in education as a student at Highland High School. He was a member of a few high school clubs. What he most appreciated was being part of the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, JROTC, which was the fundamental element of his life. After obtaining his high school diploma and brilliant pilot training, Mr. Malanga also received training in computer software as well as computer hardware. He launched a series of small businesses, making him the first African American in the state of Utah to register as a car dealership. It should also be noted that Mr. Malanga was involved, in the DRC, in the creation of numerous companies in the DRC, such as the water purification and bottling plant, mining factories, various other companies, in order to offer employment to the local population. It also imported goods into Congo and Angola as well as donated medical supplies, clothing and school supplies essential to war-torn areas. Having had the opportunity to grow up in the United States with resources that most of the Congolese children have never had, Mr. Malanga and his family have created non-profit organizations, opening an orphanage that has enabled more than 20 children to be adopted by American families. More than 30 foreign students have been admitted to American universities. In June 2006, Mr. Malanga returned to the DRC to participate in military service. In 2007, he reached the rank of captain. Regarding the political aspect, interest was born when Mr. Malanga chose to join the army to serve his country. As a leading officer in the military, he was responsible for 350 soldiers. They carried out an attack against the rebel group Mai Mai. It was then that he witnessed the vast effects of government corruption. As head of his military brigade, he found that the government did not care about its citizens. In view of the situation of overworked, underpaid soldiers, putting their lives at risk, Mr. Malanga, in perfect man of action, decided to be the voice of change for the people, hence the launch of his career politics. Realizing on the one hand, the nascent political awakening of the Congolese people, demanding good political leadership, and on the other hand, strong from the experience acquired in business, Mr. Malanga considered himself, from now on, ready to invest for the drastic reform against corruption. He was convinced that the DRC, with strong and enlightened leadership, could do better in view of its potential. In 2011, Malanga is attending a General Assembly of all the main political leaders of the opposition to select a candidate to challenge President Joseph Kabila. Frustrated by the lack of consensus of the assembly, he decides to stand for election as an independent opposition candidate. While campaigning, he was arrested on false charges and detained for more than 2 weeks of torture. He owes his release thanks to the interventions of the Carter Foundation and the United Nations. Back in the USA in 2012, Mr. Malanga devoted himself to setting up the United Congolese Party (UCP). He is working to assemble and expand his party, while continuing to campaign within the Congolese diaspora in the United States, Europe, and South Africa. Mr. Malanga's efforts as a political activist have enabled him to introduce human rights violations incited by the Congolese government to the forefront of the world stage. Call, in particular, to senators, government officials from the United States, the United Kingdom, the Vatican, Georgia. In addition, Mr. Malanga has the passion to carry out complex projects from initial planning stages to the launch and beyond, hence the creation of New Zaire. Note that on December 12, 2013, Malanga was appointed the very first ambassador of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, a collection of 52 NGOs and leaders in Washington, D.C., at a ceremony at the United States Capitol. Malanga has been tasked by the organization to raise awareness of religious intolerance throughout sub-Saharan Africa. In 2016, with the help of the British government, Malanga offered its members the opportunity for training in Georgia on the fight against corruption and tax reform, as well as on the privatization of public enterprises. It should be noted that the delegation had the advantage of working with Georgian political decision makers to strengthen the economic plan of the United Congolese Party (UCP). On April 29, 2017, at the Vatican Basilica in Rome, Italy, Mr. Malanga was made a Knight of the Grand Cross by the Order of St. Peter and Paul. Grand Croix chivalry is reserved for heads of state only. The Archbishop of the Congo and the Catholic Church expressed their full support for President Malanga's vision of bringing democracy to New Zaire. On May 17, 2017, New Zaire was officially born when President Malanga created a government in exile in Brussels. The ceremony welcomed dignitaries from Europe and the United States. If you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a family, a nation, an African proverb, adopted by President Malanga. Otherwise, Mr. Malanga launched a movement to reinvent Congolese women, offering that education, economic and societal freedom are necessary for Congolese women to progress as citizens. Malanga recognizes that it will take the efforts of all Congolese to achieve the change they want to see in their country. This is not a single man's job. As JFK would say, don't ask what your country can do, but rather what you can do for your country.